It's a quiet ache, the kind that doesn't scream but lingers. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking the question that has no real shape. Why wasn't I enough? You replay everything, the way you held space for him when he was silent, the way you forgave him again and again, hoping he'd one day realize your love was the safest place he'd ever known. You gave him the softest parts of you, your patience, your loyalty, your heart. And still, he couldn't choose you. It's a betrayal that doesn't look like betrayal on the outside. Because he didn't leave in rage, he left in silence. He faded, pulled away, not because you did something wrong, but because you were everything he couldn't receive. And now, you carry the weight of a love that never landed, grieving a man who was still alive, still near, but emotionally unreachable. Carl Jung once said that what is unconscious will rule your life, and you will call it fate. And that's what this feels like, doesn't it? Like fate had a cruel way of giving you someone to love who couldn't love you back. But what if it wasn't fate? What if it was a reflection of something much deeper? His own inability to face the love you offered because it demanded he face himself. This pain you carry, it's not just yours. It lives in the collective unconscious of women everywhere who loved men not fully formed, hoping their love would be the final piece. But love, real love, doesn't work like that. You can't save a man from his own shadow. You can't teach someone how to hold you while they're still running from themselves. So here you are, left with questions, echoes, and the haunting feeling that maybe love isn't enough. But sister, this isn't the end. This is the beginning of waking up to your own worth. Because sometimes the deepest pain is the doorway to your deepest truth. You gave everything, not because you were weak, but because you were whole, and he couldn't choose you, not because you weren't lovable, but because he hadn't yet chosen himself. There's a very specific kind of tired you feel after loving someone who couldn't choose you. It isn't the tired that sleep fixes. It's a quiet heaviness behind your ribs, a tender soreness in places you can't point to. You do the dishes, answer messages, show up for work, but there's a soft hum of ache underneath everything, like a song you can't shut off. You keep telling yourself you're okay, you keep smiling in public, you keep repeating, "It just wasn't meant to be." But in the privacy of your own mind, another voice asks the question you hate. If I gave everything, why wasn't it enough? You remember how careful you were with him, how you studied his moods like weather, how you folded yourself smaller on the days he seemed overwhelmed. You offered gentleness when he went distant, warmth when he went cold, patience when he stalled. You believed if you loved him well enough, consistently enough, he would eventually feel safe enough to choose you. And when he didn't, you turned the searchlight inward. Was I too intense, too sensitive? Did I lean in too soon? Should I have been more mysterious, less available, more effortless? You rehearse these questions like rituals, as if the right answer could roll back time. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow, the parts of us that get pushed underground because we learned they weren't welcome. Many women exile their needs there, the need to be chosen, the need to be emotionally held, the need to be met without being asked to shrink. So when a man stays ambiguous, half in, half out, the wound in the shadow wakes up. It doesn't sound like rage. It sounds like self-doubt. It whispers, work harder, be easier, earn it. That whisper is not your truth. It's an old survival spell. There's another layer too, projection. Jung said what we can't claim in ourselves, we project onto others. You may have projected your hope onto him, the hope that your steadiness would heal his chaos, that your softness would soften his defenses, that your loyalty would inspire his commitment. He, in turn, may have projected his fear onto you, fear of being seen, fear of not being enough, fear that intimacy will resurrect old pain. Your tenderness became the mirror he wasn't ready to look into, and instead of stepping closer, he stepped away. Not because you were unlovable, but because closeness demanded a reckoning with parts of himself he still avoids. This is the emotional choreography you've been dancing. You sense his distance, your nervous system panics, you move toward him to calm the alarm, he feels the pull and retreats further. You hustle for worth, he feels crowded, you feel rejected. It's elegant in its symmetry and brutal in its cost. You start calling scraps signs, reading meaning into minimal effort, and apologizing for asking for what you actually need: clarity, consistency, devotion. The grief here is complicated. You aren't only mourning him, you're mourning the version of yourself you became to try to keep him. The girl who swallowed her voice so he wouldn't feel pressured. The woman who waited for messages as if they were oxygen. The caretaker who confused keeping the peace with being loved. When you notice this, a softer truth appears. It's not that your love failed, it's that your love was doing two jobs. It was trying to nurture a relationship and hold together someone who hadn't decided to hold himself. Emotional trauma, yours or his, doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like numbness, like, I don't know what I feel, like delayed replies and vague promises. If his heart is stacked with unprocessed hurt, choosing you would mean choosing to feel. Many men were taught that feeling equals danger. Their ego learns to protect them by detaching. You bumped into that defense and took it personally. How could you not? But another possibility exists. His inability to choose was never evidence that you weren't worth choosing. It was evidence that he hadn't chosen himself yet. There's a moment in your healing where the inner voice you've been silencing clears her throat. She doesn't shout, she doesn't condemn, she says simple, steady things. Your needs are not heavy. Your longing for depth is not dramatic. Your desire to be chosen fully is not unrealistic. Her voice is unfamiliar because you've practiced ignoring it for so long. But when you let her speak, you feel your spine again. You remember the woman you were before you started performing for love. Notice what happens in your body when you consider this. You don't have to audition anymore. You don't have to keep negotiating your value with someone who can't afford it. You can let the story conclude without turning it into a verdict about your worth. You can grieve the fantasy and keep your dignity. You can stop translating mixed signals and start trusting your clarity. If it's meant for you, it won't require you to abandon yourself. This is not hardness. This is tenderness pointed inward. This is you taking your love back from a job it was never meant to do. Rehabilitate someone else's shadow and giving it the assignment it was made for, illuminating your own life. The day you stop trying to be the exception to his patterns is the day you become the author of yours. And from there, you don't beg to be chosen. You choose. You choose environments where your softness is safe, partners who meet you open-eyed, and a self you no longer leave behind. You've been carrying questions that have no clean answers. You ask yourself, why didn't he choose me? After everything, why did I give so much only to be met with distance? What did I miss? The ache doesn't just come from his absence, it comes from the confusion, the not knowing. It comes from replaying the moments when he seemed so close, so present, and then suddenly he was gone, silent, distant, emotionally unavailable. And still, you stayed. You stayed hoping your love would reach the parts of him that even he couldn't reach. You stayed because you believed that if you loved him enough, he'd finally choose you back. But what if the reason he couldn't choose you had nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with what he spent his whole life avoiding? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a man's emotional patterns, shaped by his wounds, hidden fears, and unconscious defenses, can block him from receiving even the most beautiful, patient, healing kind of love. You'll begin to see how your love may have touched the places in him that were too tender to hold, too dangerous to feel, too raw to explore. You'll also come to understand that his detachment was never proof that you were too much. It was proof that your depth triggered a truth he wasn't ready to meet. Carl Jung spoke about the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within all of us. A man who hasn't integrated his anima often projects it onto the woman he loves and then rejects her when she begins to mirror the emotional work he's been avoiding. He disconnects because staying connected would mean confronting feelings that threaten his ego, feelings he was taught to suppress in order to survive. You became a mirror, and instead of choosing you, he avoided what he saw. But this video is not just about him. It's about you stepping out of the confusion. It's about reclaiming the energy you've been pouring into unanswered questions and turning that energy inward, to restore yourself, to remember who you were before the doubt, to unlearn the belief that love must be earned. Because once you see the deeper patterns, once you understand the unconscious reasons he couldn't meet you, you'll finally stop making his avoidance mean something about your value. And that changes everything. There comes a moment, quiet, still, and strangely sacred, when a woman realizes she has given all the softness in her heart, all the patience in her soul, and all the loyalty she was taught makes her worthy of being chosen. And yet, she was not chosen. Not because she lacked value, but because he couldn't face the mirror her love held up to him. You see, this isn't just about heartbreak. It's about disorientation. It's about that sinking feeling that you were loving with your whole being, but somehow it wasn't enough. And that ache, it doesn't come from rejection alone. It comes from believing that maybe love has to be fought for. Maybe your presence has to be proven. Maybe to be chosen, you have to lose yourself just a little more. But what if that's the very spell you're meant to break? Because the truth is, his inability to choose you is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your return. Return to yourself, to your stillness, to your radiance, to your wholeness. And there are 4 deeply feminine, emotionally intelligent strategies that will help you reclaim that power. Not by fighting harder, but by aligning deeper. The first strategy is speak through silence, not explanation. When a woman over-explains, pleads, or tries to reason with a man who has already emotionally retreated, she unknowingly feeds his ego's defense mechanisms. Carl Jung taught that when a person is faced with the part of themselves they are not ready to integrate, the shadow, they retreat. Your silence becomes powerful because it refuses to chase. It forces him to sit with the very discomfort he was trying to escape, and in that silence your dignity becomes louder than words ever could. The second strategy is withdraw to create emotional clarity. This is not about punishing him, it's about protecting you. When you pull back, you untangle your identity from his confusion. Jung believed the ego clings to attachments to avoid self-reflection. By withdrawing, you disrupt the cycle. You give your heart room to breathe and your intuition space to speak. You no longer wait for his breadcrumbs. You begin nourishing yourself with your own clarity. The third strategy is mirror his energy, don't chase it. When a man gives less and you give more, you're not showing love, you're abandoning yourself. The anima within him, his inner feminine, is often projected onto the woman he desires. But when that projection becomes overwhelming, he pulls away. By mirroring his energy, you disrupt the unconscious belief that love equals sacrifice. You remind him, and more importantly yourself, that connection must be mutual, not one-sided. Then the fourth strategy is live in your feminine, not in reaction. The feminine is not chaos, it's presence, it's emotional truth. It's the knowing that you do not need to convince, compete, or perform to be chosen. Jung's concept of individuation teaches us that true power lies in wholeness. When you live in your feminine, You no longer shrink to be liked. You no longer perform to keep love. You radiate because you remember who you are. These 4 shifts aren't tactics, they're transformations. They don't ask you to play a game. They ask you to stop playing small. Let this be your turning point. Let this be the moment you stop asking why he couldn't choose you, and start asking why you kept choosing someone who couldn't meet you. Because deep down you already know, your love was never the problem. It was the mirror, and he simply wasn't ready to see what you reflected back to him. So take back the energy you were giving to his confusion, redirect it into your healing, into your glow, into your becoming. And as you do, he may finally feel the emptiness your presence once filled. But more importantly, you will feel full again. Not because he came back, but because you did. You gave everything. Now give everything back to yourself. There's a truth you've been dancing around in the quiet places of your heart. The truth that you gave him everything, your warmth, your patience, your forgiveness. You offered him the kind of love that doesn't ask for proof before giving itself away. You stayed in moments when your soul begged you to leave. You saw his wounds, his fear, his chaos, and you loved him anyway. But he still couldn't choose you. And not because you weren't lovable, not because you weren't enough, not because you didn't try. He couldn't choose you because he hadn't yet chosen himself. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that's the root of it. When a man has not yet faced his own shadow, the pain he's buried, the softness he fears, the vulnerability he has never been allowed to hold, then he cannot love in a way that's real. He will push away what touches him too deeply. He will detach from what makes him feel seen. Not because you were too much, but because your presence revealed too much. There's a story from Jung's own life where, during a painful time in his journey, he withdrew from public life. He was no longer the rising star of Freud's circle. He spent months in emotional isolation, confronting his dreams, visions, and shadows. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious. And it was only after that journey, after breaking down his own illusions, that he began to create his most powerful work. It was that inner descent that gave birth to his truest self. You see, some people are still avoiding that descent. They haven't yet stepped into the fire of self-awareness, and if you love them before they do, you will mistake their silence for your fault. You will internalize their absence as your unworthiness. But the truth is, their inability to love you the way you needed was never a reflection of your lack. It was a reflection of their limitation. And now, you get to stop grieving the version of them that only existed in your hope. Now you come home to yourself. You return to the parts of you that were always enough, even when he didn't recognize them. You stop chasing validation from someone who never even saw the brilliance of your heart, because you finally see it yourself. You no longer romanticize the potential he couldn't live up to. You romanticize your own becoming, your own glow, your own emotional freedom. You are not here to beg for love. You are not here to perform worthiness. You are here to be the woman who remembers who she is, even after someone forgets her. Because here's the soul-shifting truth. The woman who gave everything and was still not chosen becomes the woman who finally chooses herself. And that is the most powerful choice of all. This is your moment. The moment you break the pattern. The moment you stop betraying your intuition for the sake of being understood. The moment you no longer abandon yourself for the hope that someone might one day rise into who you knew they could be. You are not here to rescue broken men. You are here to witness your own healing. And in doing so, you show others what real love, rooted in self-awareness, truly looks like. So breathe. You don't need to harden. You don't need to shut down your softness. You don't need to close your heart. You just need to close the doors that let unworthy love walk in and out so freely. You are safe now, not because someone finally stayed, but because you stopped leaving yourself. If this message touched you, subscribe. Tell me in the comments what part spoke to you most. And share this with a woman who's forgetting how powerful she is. Remind her, you can give everything and still not be chosen. But that doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means it's time to give everything back to the one who always deserved it, you.